Yeah, last week, Charles, we did a 35-minute talk, and I didn't hit the record button, so those people who didn't chime in with us didn't have the benefit of the discussion that we had.
You snooze, you lose.
Okay, so Andrea and Jonathan, Charles is my son. I mentioned that in the introduction video. But he, as he said, he works for a large company, but he has his own IT company. And when I was trying to figure out who to get to do this, he said that he would step up and have this conversation. So again, Charles, thank you very much. The video was great. What is the warbling sound that we hear, though? Is that the fan on your computer?
Yeah, unfortunately, my mic picks up very well. Here, let me switch which way I'm doing the microphone. I'll see if I can fix that.
Or was it my fan?
No, because it was on Charles's video yesterday.
Go ahead and turn it back on then.
I don't hear
Any
anything.
better?
Yes, it is. What'd you do?
I just switched which microphone I'm using, so I'm using one further away from my computer.
Okay. The one on the camera itself?
Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, the other was fine. It just, I could hear it. And you know, if I can hear it with my bad hearing, that it's audible.
Valid.
So anyway, to get the discussion going today, do either of you have any questions that jumped out, or do you want me to start with a couple of questions that I had and we'll go from there like we did last week?
Go ahead and start out. Or at least I'm saying so. Jonathan, I'm sorry. I don't mean to talk for you.
Oh, no, you're good. I don't have any questions currently.
Okay, so Charles, one of the questions that I have is, what gives the company a right to track a post that I might do at home?
You do. So the moment at which you post something in a public forum, it is public. Again, this would be no different than say you going to court and something being posted in the county records. It's not that they have a right to do so. It's more that you haven't denied them the ability. By doing it in public, anyone that wants to view it can.
But do they have the right as employee to say what I can and can't post?
No, they absolutely can't. So legally, they can't limit what you can post, but you do have to be responsible for the content of that post. Again, I mentioned libel in the video. If you type something and it is inaccurate and it paints the company in a poor light, you could be legally liable for this. While they can't tell you what to post, you're free to post whatever you want. You're free to say whatever you want. You also do have to own that the outcome of that.
So would they have the right to release me based on something that I might say in a Facebook post?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened. Case law in the United States, it has happened many times in the last few years, in fact.
Well, and I think that's something that because of my training with FEMA and being a public information officer, knowing exactly where that line is that you can say something that doesn't go beyond the liable point, because I can accurately say that, you know, something came up just recently, was posted out by the judge yesterday, stating that no travel between two counties, no travel between Coryell County and Bell County. You cannot.
Oh, I saw that. That was like, how are you going to enforce that?
Right. So basically he stated you can't travel into Coryell County unless you live in Coryell County or you work as a critical infrastructure. Well, a lot of people were on fire about it. And I went on and I explained as a PIO from my organization that yes, he can say that. Yes, he can do that. And yes, he can get National Guard or law enforcement to actively deny people entry to the county. However, he's not doing that. He's just saying the words without doing it. He's the judge. He's allowed to. And a lot of people were coming back and saying, well, that's unconstitutional, blah, 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 blah. And it's not. He is the judge. And according to Texas government code, he has the right to say that and do that if he chooses to enforce it. So when I was going on social media and trying to explain that, I had to step sideways from myself, which I wanted to tell them they were all stupid, and act as a professional in an organization that runs and works in emergency management and disaster, saying, no, he does have this right. This is where his authority is and everything else.
That's a longer discussion, because a judge has zero right to get National Guard to enforce anything, because legally only the governor in the United States can
Right,
activate.
but as the county judge and basically then making him the highest elected official in the county, he can request the National
He can
Guard.
request, yes, but Andrea could request it. That doesn't mean that the governor will grant it.
I just know, having been in Corio County, there's no way to enforce it because there's too many blasted roads in and out of that county.
But that's where this what you say on social media could come back and hurt you, because I have to come at it from that standpoint of, I know the law. I specifically teach that law to emergency management and first responders and everything else. So being able to accurately voice that is necessary.
Andrea, you have an audience behind you.
I do.
By the way.
Oh, at least he's not up here.
For a minute, it looked like he was about to attack from that chair back there. Okay, so Charles, one of the other things that you hit on is doing, who owns the data, and you hit on if you're doing company work on. Or if you're off work, but you're doing company work on a company device, the company still owns the data. Or if you're on work, I don't remember exactly how you worded it.
What's the question? But I'll review that.
The question is, if I'm at home, but I'm doing work for the company, even if it's something as simple as just, checking my company email, but I'm doing it on my own personal device. Does the company still have rights to the data that's on my personal device?
Yeah, so that gets a little sketchy. So there's a couple of, and again, this is unique by region, or this is different by region. In the United States, if you are doing any work on a company-owned device, the company has the ability to look at it, and you basically can't do anything about it, right? So if you're opening your personal emails, if you're having intimate chats with your spouse, whatever, on a company device, guarantee the company can look at it, and you can't say a thing in the United States. Now, if you are doing any work on company time, specifically at a company premise, the company also generally has the right to whatever you're doing. Now, does that mean I, as a senior manager, can come up and take your phone from you? Absolutely not, right? It's your personal device. But none of the conversations you have on that phone, none of the actions you take are private while you're on that premise. Okay. Now, where it gets sketchy is when you get off premise. What I would say is on your own time, right? So even though you're really working, but you're at home right now and you're doing something for Calvary, but you're also playing on your phone. Do they have a right to the data on your phone? Absolutely not. It's not a chainable thing. There's not a lot of case law on it yet, though. So I'm going to say that if you were doing something that was harmful to the company, they might have a reason to get that data. But they would have to prove the harm first. And again, I go back to my disclaimer: I'm not a lawyer.
So it would, in other words, if I understand you right, then what they would have to do is actually go to court and show that they somehow suffered because of what happened.
Yes.
Get a court order to compel me to supply the device so that they could pull the data.
Correct.
Which seems like it would be more difficult than it needs to be unless it's a gross
And typically, if they could already prove harm, they would already have their basis. So there wouldn't be a need to, yeah. But again, we're talking about this oddball case where you're doing something in your personal realm on your personal device, technically not on company time, that causes harm to the company.
And like you said, if they were able to prove that in court, they probably already had whatever information and data they needed.
Right. Now this is highly different. So today is odd, right? We're all working from home. Things are a little bit different. There will be a whole lot of case law that I'm sure comes out of this, but today is odd. In 6 weeks ago world, right? If you're working at work, so let's talk about doing private things at work on a work device. In the United States, if I'm sending an email and it includes my private data, so security number, whatever, through a company system, on a company device, or even through the company's email on my personal device, the company has rights to that data. You're using something they supplied, whether it be their software, their hardware, to do this, create this data, right? And it's just an email, but it's got my personal stuff in it. Now, in Europe, that's not the case. So in Europe, if you are a person working for a company, your private data is yours, even if you do it on company time, on a company device and using a company system, because their rules are significantly different than ours.
And what creates that?
Culture. The same reason, and I brought up the right to be forgotten. It's a cultural thing. It's also, and I say it's a point of ignorance, because they believe that, again, these things can be kept private. If an email gets hacked in the United States, right? If your company email gets hacked in the United States, the company can go after the hacker for damages. In a European country, if a company email got hacked, the company could go after the hacker, but the employees could go after the company because they had their private data stolen from the company. It's a significant cultural difference. It's not a practical difference. I guarantee if you store your emails, if your email supplier is Microsoft or your email supplier is Zoho or someone else, and that's stored on some third-party server and it gets hacked, you're going to have a hard time enforcing that your company should have done more.
Right.
Okay, so what questions did you guys have?
I have one. If the company can prove that you said something harmful, how does that fall under being protected as a whistleblower?
So I'm not I'm not well versed in whistleblowers. Most of these things all come from practical. Some things happened and we've had to deal with it. I've personally had to be involved in dealing with it. Whistleblowers, I haven't had any because my industry is pretty straightforward. But in general, a whistleblower is going to be someone who exposes a gross negligence or gross harmful action, right? There's a difference between saying my company is dumping toxic waste in the ocean and saying John Smith, my boss, is a jerk who's lying to somebody on a sales call or exaggerating something on a sales call. One of them's a whistleblower action and protected, and one of them's you giving away information. There's also a big difference between highlighting, again, that gross negligence and that harmful action and saying, we just signed Tesla as a client. Well, now you might be giving away some proprietary information. Maybe this isn't something that's gone public yet. There could be some service level agreement that prevents you from saying who your restricted clients are, or whatever the case may be. So you can be harmful without trying to do good.
So where would NDA laws and requirements fall into all of this mess?
NDA. So the other part is we the United States are a bunch of different laws, right? So in Europe, they generally have the European EU standard law. Here in the U.S., though, we don't. Every state has a little bit different. There is some federal law that guides things. So the reality is it's a patchwork. You may have a basis for a claim in one state and not in another.
In reality, then it's how well the NDA was written to protect the company.
And what exactly it was written against, and is the basis of it legal, right? So just like you can't legally profit from criminal action, there are some things you can't write an NDA against, right? If you witnessed, again, let's go back to that dumping, kind of the whistleblower thing, right? Dumping toxic waste in the ocean. That's a very extreme example, but if you had seen something like this and they had you sign an NDA against it, that's really not enforceable. They're doing a criminal action. They can't keep you from disclosing said criminal action.
Well, we had something not to that extreme, but a similar issue in North Dakota when I was up there and I was working for Balfour Beatty Communities. The building, the structure that we were in, the walls were leaking green goo, for lack of a better way to put it. And with it being a military installation, a military building and everything else, but they were occupying the property. There were several people who had made the statement that the building was sick, it needed to be taken care of, and that type of thing. And they actually went on, it was, first it wasn't employees, first it was people visiting the building were saying it, and then the employees were saying, yes, we're, they were commenting then on social media in regards to, yes, this building does have this problem, yes, our employer knows about it, and that type of thing. And several of the employees actually received a letter of counseling, an LOC, for commenting that, yes, this is in fact true. So, they were told if they said anything again that, they were going to be released from their position and possibly fined for harm against the company. Well, in that state, there was no ability to fine someone. They could release them from their position because it was a negative stance against the company on social media, which was actually written into the handbook. You could not speak negatively against the company in the handbook. But then the question there lied in was, at what point do they start crossing a line saying that they're going to fine these people? And, they can't can the employees verify something that has already been said by someone else? Can they say, yes, this is true? You can walk in and see the goo running down the walls.
And again, there's nuance where you have to get a lawyer, and that would be one of the ones where you get a lawyer. But ultimately, I believe the company would probably have a hard time because you're not saying something unfactual, and you were not the initiator of that claim, right? So I'm not putting out a new post saying, hey, my company is negligent in not repairing XYZ. No. Someone said there is an event, an action, a state that this building is in, and you are simply confirming that what they said is accurate, right? This building does have said problem. As long as you left it at that, you would probably be fine. But again, not a lawyer. Contact one for nuance stuff, right? Ultimately, what we're talking about, though, is data. And that's one of those cases where you put something in a public realm, your company, and Joe Bob off the street and Jonathan Haggard on the call have the ability to go look at that data, right? And they can act upon that data.
Well, just last night, just to kind of expand on this a little bit, last night I was listening to the news, and one of the hospitals, I think it was in the New York area, but I'm not sure, some of the nurses were outside protesting. And one of the nurses' husband was out there and recorded it and posted it on Facebook. Now, this didn't happen last night. Last night's when I saw the news article. It happened, 5 or 6 days ago. But the hospital came to the nurse through some channel and actually threatened the nurse's position at the hospital because she was outside protesting. Not that she was outside protesting, but that because her words were posted on social media that was then carried around the world.
And again, same thing. This is no different than you standing on it. So I mentioned kind of digital street corner, right? Posting something online or having yourself videoed posting online is, again, no different than you standing on the street corner and calling out your employer, right? You have still said something against your employer, and you will be held responsible for those words, those actions, etc. In this case, she didn't post it online. That doesn't prevent the fact that she still did it in public. Now, if this was a private recording, this was her house, and somebody recorded her without her permission, then we've got a basis for a different claim, right? Yes, I said these things, but I said them in the privacy of my own home. Somebody recorded me illegally. Kind of fruit of the poison tree, right? You can't use something that was obtained illegally as a legal basis for XYZ. But at the same time, this isn't the case for her. She was doing something in public. In public, you have no expectation of privacy. Someone recorded her doing it. They posted it online in, again, a public forum. Everything is on the up and up. Her company is absolutely right to say, hey, you have these strong opinions against us.
But the fact that she was out in front of the hospital and doing a public protest isn't what they threatened her for. It was the fact that her public protest was picked up on social media.
Okay.
That's the part that I found, especially knowing that we were coming up into this discussion this morning. That was
well, and again, the nuance, right? So you can. They would have a hard time getting onto her for the fact that what she said became viral, right? She can't control that. She didn't put it online, but she still said it in a public forum, and it may or may not have been either accurate, or it may or may not have shed positive light on the topic. And this goes back to that note that I made too. Even if you're in the right, okay, even if everything you said is accurate, even if you are within your right to do so, if your company, my host just upgraded his account. Even if you were, even if what you said was accurate, even if you were in the right, if you get fired, could you sue them and possibly get a job back? Maybe. Would you want to? Well, I mean, there are people that sue to get their job back, but I'm not sure I would want to go back to a company that I had to sue to force to hire me, right? And then again, could you sue and probably get some money out of it? Possibly. But are you going to take years and thousands of dollars with a lawyer and time? And suing someone is a recourse when there's been, gross negligence, etc. It's not really a way to live your life. It's not a way to recoup time. It's really not a way to recoup a job. It can be used as a way to recoup money, but if they fired you and you picked up a new job in 3 months at a different company, are we talking about a lot of lost wages? Probably not as much as you're going to pay the lawyer.
At that point, then it just becomes an exercise in I want to publicly shame you.
And personally, I don't have the energy to do that.
All right. Did you guys have any other questions?
Okay, we'll take this out of the employee-employer realm. Volunteers. What can volunteers, and I'm going to use Red Cross as an example. A lot of people who dislike the Red Cross because they don't like their financial dealings,
Model. Yeah.
their financial model, right? They outside perspective of what's going on and how those funds are being used. They don't see the restricted and unrestricted funds, blah, 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 whatever. But I'm using them as an example. When you have volunteers that are working for an organization, what, in your opinion, would be things that could be either allowed, disallowed, could be cause for them to be terminated from the organization?
Right. So same thing applies, right? The only thing you can take away from a person is what you've given them, right? So if I am if I'm an employer, I can take away your job, right? If I am I apologize. I'm trying to log into another call so I can squeeze a couple minutes in with you guys. If I'm an employer, I can take away your job. If I'm not an employer, right? If I am the volunteer organization that you volunteer for, can I tell you you can't volunteer? Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be because you said something wrong. I could not like your shirt today. You're not allowed to volunteer ever again. Doesn't matter. I make the rules. I'm the organization. That said, even if you're not associated with an organization, right? If I go out right now today and I post defamatory information about Calvary that is untrue, Calvary can sue me for libel, right? They can say, hey, you posted this stuff and it's not true and it's caused us it's monetary harm and we're going to sue you for these losses. They can sue me to stop me from doing it again too, right? That's a legal recourse they have because I posted something that was inaccurate or untrue. You can do that for anybody if someone posts something that's inaccurate or untrue. If they're not posting something inaccurate, they can say whatever they want. If I'm volunteering for the Red Cross and I'm saying, I am anti-abortion, and the leader of the Red Cross decides, and I don't know what their opinion is, but they decide that they are pro-abortion, they can say, hey, you can't volunteer for us because you don't share our opinion. That's within their rights. But they can't go and sue me because I said something. They have no monetary recourse against me because we disagree in opinion. I didn't say anything about their organization. Only thing they can take from me is what they've given me, which is you can't volunteer.
Okay.
All right, Charles. Well, thank you. I know you've got to get off to another meeting. I appreciate you signing in with us, and we're going to continue on for a couple of minutes. But thank you very much.
Have a good afternoon.
Yep. So the reason I want to continue on for a couple of minutes is just to let you guys know, and then for the folks that are watching this later, our conversation next week is going to be with Pastor Greg Washington from Abiding Faith Church here in the greater Kansas City area. And he's going to be discussing racial bias. As a black man growing up in the Kansas City area, he has a few times where he's personally experienced it, and he said that he would share a story. So he's going to do our video. I have invited him to join us next week for this type of discussion format like we've had the last couple of weeks. I haven't gotten a response back whether his schedule is going to allow him to do that or not. But even if he can't join us, we're going to come together in this same format next Thursday, and we'll continue the conversation based on his video. So I will see you guys next Thursday morning, and I am very thankful that I did remember to hit the record button. Thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome.
Because I had forgotten. So both of you guys next week, make sure, whoever happens to say it first, somebody make sure I hit the record button. Because I really do regret the fact that everybody else in the class didn't have the benefit of the conversation we had last week. It was a very good conversation. So this week's conversation was more legal and not. I enjoyed Charles being here. Just the subject matter for me was not as enjoyable as what we had last week and how deep we could get into the conversation. Though, let me preface, or let me put that into parentheses. I didn't enjoy the subject matter in that I would rather us not be able to have that type of conversation ever at all. But since those type of situations do exist, the conversation we had was a very good conversation last week. And I expect our conversation next week with Dr. Washington will be as well, or with Professor or Pastor Washington will be as well. So I will see you guys next Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. And just like I did this week, what I've done is I've talked with all of the speakers, and I've asked them to be able to give me their videos so that I can post them, trying to post them by noon on Wednesday, so that if you guys don't want to get up and watch it early Thursday morning, you could watch it Thursday afternoon, or Wednesday afternoon, or Wednesday evening. But that gives them the full week to get me the video, basically. So if he said he'd try to get it to me by Tuesday evening, and then that way I can watch it Wednesday morning, so I know a little bit about what he's saying and can do my introduction video. So and what do you guys think about this format, the way we're doing it? Does it work for you guys as far as seeing the videos, having the discussion?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's working for me. It gives me the opportunity in between my other meetings to take care of these things.
Cool. So, and then I trust that it's working well for the others. Again, for all of you that are watching this video later this week, once I've got it posted, we invite you to join us on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. If you look in the announcements in Canvas, I go in and I post the link for the thing in announcements. I'm actually thinking about going ahead and getting the paid version of Zoom, which will allow me to be able to do this a little bit in advance, because then I can go in and schedule the meeting and have the URL where I can post it instead of having to wait and do it 5 minutes before the meeting starts. So, do you guys have anything else before we sign off today?
I'm good.
I don't got anything.
If not, thank you guys very much, and we will see you next week.
Alrighty.
All right.